and welcome to another episode of the 905 podcast. My name is Roland Tanner.
I am Joel McLeod.
And in the roundup this week, we've got a couple of stories of a kind of provincial angle, I guess. Starting off with Doug Ford's recent comments to the mayor of Mississauga, Bonnie Crombie, telling her to stop whining. And a few people have had some thoughts about this, and you're one of them, Joel.
Yeah, well, there's a clip kind of passing around on social media from City News CP24 of Doug Ford basically trying to take Bonnie Crombie to task for her criticisms of Bill 23, basically stating that the city of Mississauga, for one, could stand to lose millions of dollars in development fees over the long haul, which is going to impact their operating budget and possibly cause the increase of property taxes and whatever have you. That's a debate for another day, whether that's good or bad or whatever have you. But Doug Ford's comments to the press was, telling Bonnie Crombie to quit complaining, quit her whining, and stop being disingenuous in her comments to the public. It was interesting to say the least. What caught my, whenever you hear a male politician going off on a female politician about that, it was it kind of perks my ears and what's going on there. But what really kind of connected the dots, it wasn't even me, it was and Roland, you got to help me out here, but Sid Sixeros, thank you, Sid. I'm sorry if you're listening to this, my apologies. But I saw a clip of him on the, he's co-host of Breakfast Television. Saw a clip of him. He was pointing out that Doug Ford seems to have a habit, kind of doubling down in this language whenever it comes to a woman criticizing him. If you flash back, I think a week before, the Auditor General Bonnie Lysyk came with her report, basically criticizing, what did the provincial government do with all that COVID money. There's also criticisms of the way that the province's casinos are operating. That there's questionable logistics happening there in terms of preventing money laundering from going on there. And so she, in her report, she put this out there. And of course, what is Doug Ford's response? Stay in your lane. I mean, it startles me. The Auditor General, Bonnie Lysyk, was like their best pal when it came to the Auditor General's office criticizing the previous Liberal government's handling of gas plants, of their policies, when it came down to going through them with a fine-tooth comb, as the Auditor General should, and finding, these things don't add up, things aren't quite working out, whatever have you. All of a sudden, like they're doing stand-up work. They're doing the right thing, shining the light on government corruption, government mismanagement. We need them to keep those damn Liberals honest. And now when she does the same thing to this progressive Conservative government, it's basically stay in your lane, shut up, do your job. And I'm sorry, but what workplace would we sit there and say to a CEO or president of a corporation, saying to a female employee, female subordinate, saying that to them, and we say, well, that's just, she really should stay in her lane. She really should stop complaining and really should stop with the, with the rhetoric and whatnot. Like, where would we say that is an acceptable phrase or acceptable behavior from a president or CEO of a private corporation, private company, in this day and age?
That's a reasonable question. there's behavior in politics that is, we still are in the habit of accepting certain behavior from politicians that would not be accepted in any other walk of life. It would be considered completely unprofessional and grounds for all kinds of complaints.
Mm-hmm.
Is Ford being sexist? My gut says, yeah. Might he use these same words against a man? My gut also says, yeah, I wouldn't put it past him. I mean, and is to an extent, is that any more forgivable? These are still unprofessional and kind of ridiculous ways to behave. I mean, then again, I've said some pretty unprofessional things about Doug Ford. I mean, to an extent, the language used against Bonnie Lysyk, who is a public servant, who doesn't have the ability to fight back. Basically, I'm always aware of the difficult position that employees of government or the legislature or whoever are in, and that and sometimes I feel they are not answerable enough. But in many ways, a politician can stand up and throw any amount of mud at them, and they cannot throw mud back. Bonnie Crombie, at least, she's been around for a while. She can look after herself, and she can fight back in using the usual political stuff. But yeah, it's a bit of a habit, isn't it? I mean, like you said, Sid Sixero said that, and then there's another example of again, I mean, kind of the fact that QP, the recent dispute with QP, in some ways the leadership is, and I'm using the words of Kelly Elliott here from Twitter, the sort of leadership of QP is female dominated, her words,
right,
and that also, kind of like a certain amount of kind of paternalistic, don't make me angry or you won't like it when I'm angry, kind of talk coming from Ford. Yeah, should we be surprised? No. Is this completely in line with what everybody thinks Doug Ford is? Yes. So to an extent, it's like it's just hardly surprising. Other than that, it's not acceptable anymore.
Look at what's going on with. Let's look at his behavior when it comes to our the unions. We know QP. The QP members who educational workers in our school systems, predominantly female. It's a predominantly female profession, and I'm going to go and invoke the notwithstanding clause to get my way. It's astounding. Yeah, there's no pushback on male dominated unions. The firefighters, police unions, that kind of thing. Oh, we'll find the money to allow police to hire more cops and more firefighters. And not just be clear, folks, I'm not saying don't hire more cops or more firefighters, or don't pay them more. They do a dangerous job. They need it, but yet there's no pushback for women who are trusted to help teach our children, who are helped to keep our schools running and whatnot. Oh no, they're asking too much. We can't give them what they want. Same as our hospital system. Nursing is a very female dominated profession, and they have been asking for just respect since the start of this pandemic. Give them a break. Give them a break. Give them a chance to breathe, and pay them for after being the heroes of the pandemic. Give them the pay that they deserve. Nope, can't find that. They're just greedy, greedy whatever, and we can't find the money to help them out. And it's like, you start looking at this as a certain trend happening here, and it's like, well, why does this constantly keep coming up whenever a woman steps to the microphone and says, I want what I deserve? We deserve to be paid fairly, to be recognized for the hard work that we're doing. We deserve to be to be heard when we're advocating for our constituents, or we deserve to be heard when we believe that mismanagement of public funds has occurred.
Yeah, it does reek of that, of the old-fashioned calm down dear approach. I think
Yeah.
What's his name, Cameron in Britain was the last prime minister to sort of say that, just openly say it. I think now there's just, they do it more in a coded way, and this is kind of that code of, well, you're whining. I mean, what is Bonnie Crombie saying? She's complaining about the fact that the cities are looking at a massive financial shortfall, combined with developers just getting carte blanche in every regard. I mean, that's the very definition of not whining. It's not. And why did he pick out Bonnie Crombie when every mayor in the 905 would be saying the same thing, pretty much?
Well, we know we had Amo on a couple episodes ago to discuss that they have legitimate concerns. They were not consulted on that bill, and now you're left with not just Bonnie Crombie, but numerous mayors across the 905 and across the province who are saying, "Wait a minute! Like, how is this supposed to work now? Like, our entire financial system was geared around developer charges. If you want to do away with it, fine. But what are municipalities supposed to do now, right?"
And why should Bonnie Crombie get on board, to use his words?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's where why did he pick out her? Well, apparently she's handing out leaflets or something. It's like, again, well, that's politics, dude.
He did the same thing when he was, that's what you do in your politics. You hand out leaflets. You mobilize your base. You hold rallies. You hold, what do you call it? Oh, Ford Fests to drum up support and mobilize your grassroots base. This is. I thought Sid's comment, was kind of an eye opener. Like I didn't connect the dots before, but he kind of did it for me when I saw this clip, and I said, yeah, he kind of does. When a woman steps to the microphone and says, "Excuse me, I have some points to make here." It's quit your bitching, stay in your lane. Get on board, quit your whining, and so say that to he dare wouldn't say that to John Tory. I'll say that much. He never said that to John Tory. Say, "Hey, John, quit your whine, stay in your lane, figure out your mess." He couldn't wait to come to Toronto's defense and say, "Well, we'll find you some money for this fiscal year to help your operating costs." Mississauga comes calling, and it's like, hey, stay where you are, don't get uppity.
The irony is, of course, that with what's just been done by the province to the municipalities, Mississauga is in a particularly difficult place because they are more behind than almost anywhere else in hitting their targets for property. Why is that? Because Mississauga has been doing that kind of development more than anybody else for the last 50 years, and they've got no land left to build on. They can only intensify because there is no green space. So they're, deep in a hole. They've basically spent the family silver and already built.
They've literally painted themselves into a corner.
Yeah. So Mississauga is in trouble. People are, we talked earlier in the year about how Mississauga's population is unbelievably actually dropping. So Mississauga is in trouble. That is the legacy of Hazel McCallion and all the, it's the legacy of provincial policy since the Second World War. And they're going to reap the whirlwind first, in essence. But what's Bonnie Crombie supposed to do? I think it's reasonable enough to say, we're being screwed here. An already difficult situation is just now getting worse. Ford looks at the world through, well, basically through a lens of a dinosaur. It is a male-dominated world. Whose policies, if you want to see the most macho, male-dominated culture in in this country go to a city hall on a night when a development application is being considered and when the developers are in, and they all stand at the back of the room in their dark suits and look angry as the councillors dare to consider whether they will approve or disapprove their building. My God, you never see a woman there. Everything that's been done with the developers in mind in the last few weeks is already reeked of sexism and the traditional male way of looking at the world, of using up resources and to hell with the consequences and don't let anybody stand in our way because we know what's best. Can we point at this and say this is another example? Sure, but I'd say everything that Ford does already reeks of that kind of I try to avoid phrases that everybody's using just because, but male privilege, it is. Yeah, he's a dinosaur. He's a male dinosaur, and that's the way he operates.
Why don't we call a break on that? We'll come back after this. Okay, and we're back with more to talk about. So we've gone from Doug Ford is a closet sexist, definitely has a way of talking to women, that politely. To the ND more in the Queen's Park question: has the NDP shot themselves in the foot in the latest leadership race? And by that I mean Marit Stiles, who is going to be crowned leader of Her Majesty's loyal opposition at Queen's Park, because nobody else wanted the job, basically. It's you might not have been paying attention because but Marit Stiles, who I'll be honest was a fantastic education critic in the previous government, who really held Doug Ford and Stephen Lecce to task during the pandemic for just confusing and muddled messaging in terms of what was going on in our schools. She showed up most days than Andrea Horvath did, I thought. So credit to where credit's due. She did a great job as a critic in the opposition. And I wasn't surprised when she put forward her name to run for leader of the NDP. I thought, yeah, that made perfect sense. Great, go for it. And that was it. Nobody else put their name forward, and she is going to be crowned or given be made the leader of the opposition. Now, there are two ways to say this. The NDP are completely, they just looked at her and said, yeah, that's it. We want her as leader. We were so behind her as leader. There's nobody else possibly who would want to put their name forward. Or two, the NDP have really screwed themselves over here. And I'm inclined to think the latter. Now, here's why. Leadership races are a great way to reinvigorate the party, to highlight the party, to get people to pay attention to the party, to get the people to pay attention to potential leaders, and to draw attention and to really force public shifts in attention to new ways of, well, how can we do things differently? The NDP, through their own, maybe their own rules, I don't know. You had to put up $50,000 to even enter into the race. And then on top of that, and then you got to go fundraise to pay for the busing and the plane trips around Ontario to get your supporters. Was the task to, were the levels too onerous, too high for other members to come in? But I look and say, you're telling me, sitting in the opposition, you have a party that is potentially poised to win power next election. No one in the entire party said, I want to crack at that. Even just to say, Marit, I know you're a good candidate and you're a good person. I honor you, but I'm going to take a crack at this. No one at all wanted to do that. There's something to be said there.
Yeah, and I think I would say let's just flat out discount that thing. Yeah, there were loads of other people who would love to run for the leadership of the NDP, but they chose not to. And the question is, why did they choose not to? Not because they don't want the job. I mean, I just think that's just, you know, the PCs are going to say that. That's nonsense. We know that Catherine Fife was interested in it. We know that there was a guy trying to put together money. Can't remember his name. As recently as earlier this week. There are other people, Wayne Gates, Laura May Lindo, these all people whose names were kind of thrown around who were thinking about it. So why didn't they run? Well, I mean, certainly you already mentioned sort of what one aspect is that maybe that $55,000 price tag was too high. Now, you know, in a previous generations, finding $55,000 wasn't too difficult when you could take corporate donations. There would have been a union who would have stumped up that, or stumped up big chunks of it, or would have, you know. Mm-hmm. There are ways and means when you've got corporate donations to do that. Now you're really dependent on the membership. Well, unless I'm very much mistaken, the NDP's membership, whether they're in first, second place, or third place, or what place they are in Ontario, their membership lags far, far, far behind the Ontario Liberals and the PCs. And also their membership, certainly all the other parties lag far, far, far behind the PCs in terms of their members' spending power and perception that spending money on politicians is a worthwhile expense. I mean, I think, you know, there's a direct correlation, as we see at the moment, between donations that are supposed to be personal but are coming from people with corporate connections to the PCs, and you know, it's like A follows B, legislation follows a donation. You know, I mean, it's almost that clear. It's not like that with the NDP and the Liberals. And when your membership is, you know, the opposition parties in Ontario cannot, the vast majority of ridings, maybe not the vast majority, certainly around 50% of ridings in the whole province, at least one of the two opposition parties, whether it's the Liberals or the NDP, basically will not exist in any meaningful sense. Mm-hmm. Their accounts are done by the central party. They may have 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 members. Yeah, maybe they've got 20 members, but, you know, 15 of those are pretty ancient, and, you know, one of them does a handful do monthly donations if you're lucky. But I mean, even that's almost a healthy riding in today's world, if you can sort of point to 20 people who are like vaguely involved. Now, we were talking about this before we came on. I mean, maybe political parties haven't been mass movements in a long time, but I think there is a generalized decline in political involvement as people become more and more disenchanted with mainstream politics as a means to their ends. I mean, I think of the people who are volunteers and activists in the 905, in the areas that I'm most familiar with. Often those people are also, you know, you may know them because of their involvement in environmental politics or this or that or the other, and they'll also be involved in party politics. But I suspect that is also declining. People will now be only active in one sector rather.
Yeah, that's not a new trend. That's been happening for a generation. The current, you know, millennials are killing the political parties because you're right. Like it's an old white man's game still for all three parties: Liberal, NDP, and the Progressive Conservatives. The youth of today are not interested in signing up a $10 membership to sit around and sip coffee and talk about seniors' tax credits and what they need. They're not interested in that. It doesn't speak to them. They don't care about it. They want to talk about climate change. They want to talk about inflation. They want to talk about how are they going to afford a home when they can't find a job that will pay them a fair wage or a fair salary. These are the things that matter to the youth, and they're not caring. They're mobilizing in other ways. So that being said, like when I say they're mobilizing, you're right. They're joining grassroots organizations, environmental groups, labor movements, that kind of thing. So what does that mean for the modern political party? Well, it means you have to go to them. You have to open the door to them and say, okay, come on in, let's chat, let's jam, and let's figure out how I can encourage you to mark an X next to my name when it comes time to vote. The NDP kind of shot themselves in the foot on that one. That's what a leadership race is about throwing open the door and getting these new ideas. And people say, oh, what are you talking about over there? Are you talking about basic income? Oh, okay, that sounds interesting. What, you're talking about a living wage? Oh, okay. Oh, you're talking about some kind of climate change policy. Okay, tell me more about that. And it's the quote unquote the marketplace of ideas. The NDP said, no, forget that. We're just going to give it to Marit Stiles. And knowing the NDP, they're thinking, oh, she's going to kick all sorts of ass at question period. She's going to just know all the right questions to ask, and she'll hold Doug Ford to the fire at question period. And you know what I say to that? It won't matter. It won't matter because nobody cares about question period. You'll get at very best, a 20-second soundbite or clip of an exchange on the evening news. If people watch that, it's a waste of time, in my opinion, which means I think the NDP might have given the next election to the Liberals. And this is a big what if. This is not a guarantee. And I'm reserving the hell out of this request that I reserve the right to be wrong on this, folks, because I very well could be. But I want you to hear me out on this. If we know, Roland and I know for a fact, there are a number of Liberals who are interested in running for the leadership of that party. They want to take on the rebuilding of the Liberal Party of Ontario. I don't know about policies. I don't care about that right now. But the point being is you're going to have, if you have a handful of people running around this province, holding fundraisers in community centers, talking with people, reaching out to these grassroots organizations saying, come talk to me. I want to do this for you. I want to pass this law, change this policy, whatever, You start a dialogue happening, and that's where the millennials, the youth of today, not even youth, we're talking 20 to 30 years. That's the other thing. Just hear me out on this. When I say young people, I am not talking 18 to 20, and that's what people think. I'm talking 30 to 40-year-olds. These are where millennials are today. They are working and they're trying to find a way forward in life, and they're not finding it. The doors that were open to our parents' generation are slammed shut, and they're locked up from the other side. Millennials know this, and they're looking for a way to get ahead. If you find somebody who comes up with policies to speak to them right now, in this moment, not in 3 years' time, like right now, you're going to win them over. They're going to stop, and they're going to start listening to you. They're going to tell their friends and their family, listen to this guy, listen to this woman. He or she has ideas that I think will help me out. And they will gravitate towards them. 3 years is a lifetime in politics. And you need to start that momentum. Once you start that momentum, you can build on it. You can keep it going. And you say, well, how do we know this will work? Because it did work. It worked in 2015. That's when Justin Trudeau won. I know people are going to say, Trudeau, he let us down and whatnot. And I agree. He has not shown up to be the promise that we thought he was in 2015. But remember, in 2015, the Liberals were a write-off. People assumed, well, they are done. They are a third-place party forever now. And the fight forever is between the Conservatives and the NDP. The Liberals are done. Why do we even bother? Trudeau comes in, and people say, oh, he's got nice hair. Trudeau did the hard work. He went from coast to coast to coast talking with people during the leadership race. People gravitated towards him, and they signed on, and he held on to those people for the entire term of Stephen Harper. And everybody wrote him off. Everybody said, oh, he's a lightweight. He's a know nothing. Why even bother? He's all sizzle and no steak, as they say out in Alberta. Turns out he's enough to defeat Stephen Harper, and he's been prime minister ever since.
Yeah, I mean, and yeah, whatever you may think of Trudeau, the Prime Minister, Trudeau, the leader of the third place Liberal Party, played a blinder, an absolute blinder, and did. I mean, turned that party around from basically. There were many people in the Liberal Party who would not have placed a lot of money on the Liberals' ability to come back. Certainly not in one election. You know, basically the kind of game that I suspect Del Duca was playing in the most recent provincial election of like, well, we're not going to win it this time, but we got to look ahead to the election after that, which I cannot understand why anybody would think that way. But anyway, um, that was, you know, there were people who were certainly talking that way in the Liberals back then, and yeah, it's amazing what a leader can do.
I do want to put an asterisk on my statement. I'm not saying what is past is prologue. We could get it. The Liberals could have a good leadership race. They elect a very competent and capable leader. That person isn't predestined now to become Premier of Ontario. They will have to stick around and rebuild that party from the ground up, and that might take 2 election cycles. I am saying it's very doable, and the momentum right now could be on the Liberal side if the Liberals don't cock it up, which they very well might.
I'm not willing to go that far because Marit Stiles could just play a blinder. I mean, certainly I think it's fair to say that, you know, from our kind of perspective as kind of some kind of media outsiders just watching things, which NDP player caught our attention over the last year or so? Marit Stiles, absolutely. You know, her name would just keep coming up. It would come up in discussions on social media. So yeah, well played. But yeah, giving up free publicity, you don't do that. And there are in terms of like major league publicity that you're going to get from all media entities for weeks on end, repeatedly. You know, you're going to get taken all over everything you do. You're going to get interviews, you're going to get debates, you're going to get all this free stuff given to you, and you give that up for an acclamation. Now, in whose interest is an acclamation? Well, I'd say only one person's, and that is Marit Stiles. And it may be that she basically is like, okay, look, guys, I'm going to win. Just let me have it, and I can, you know, I'll make sure that you're the critic for blah, blah, blah. And that's perfectly legitimate and perfectly normal. But you know what? I mean, maybe that's the way she saw it. Maybe it isn't. Who knows? But if I were her, and I thought I was an absolute shoo-in, I would still want that leadership election to have gone through that process. I mean, having been inside on 2 leadership elections, the Kathleen Wynne leadership election, and let's say inside, I was involved with a local level, not really inside. But you know, a party member. You know, I saw how the particularly in a really good leadership election where the winner was going to be Premier of the province, you know, the membership just skyrockets. You know, increases by multiple. And sure, you don't keep all those guys. A lot of those people just get, you know, going to vote and then they disappear. But not all of them do. And if the person they join to support wins, well, they're more likely to stay on. So, you know, just in terms of donations and money and engagement and involvement and refreshing the membership of really revitalizing, revitalizing your party, boy, it's a powerful thing. And to give that up is
foolhardy.
If there are party high ups who are kind of angling for this because they think it's in their interest to just get Marit in there and on with it, I think that's naive.
Yeah. What's our final story for the night? Or day, depending on when you're listening to this.
Well, it's a good question. What is our final story?
We were going to talk about the Burlington purchasing of Robert Bateman High.
Well, yeah. I mean, I guess we could, yeah. And actually, our good friend at the Burlington Gazette posted an article which makes a very highly valid point, which is that the announcement came out 2 weeks ago about the actual costs of buying Bateman, not just buying Bateman, but the costs after buying it for making it habitable and usable as a location to be used as a library, as a satellite campus for Brock University, and various other things, community space, etc. And now you may remember some months ago there was the whole kind of saga with the councillor for Ward 4, Shauna Stolte, getting in trouble because she was alleged to have kind of divulged information that shouldn't have been divulged in terms of the costs of involved with Bateman. The number she predicted, if I remember correctly, she didn't release the number. She just said, we're talking in the ballpark of 50 million and up. The number that actually came in was 49.9 million, 0.1 of a million short of the number that Shauna Stolte had said was, the sort of low mark for the costs. If you ever want to think that politicians aren't spiteful, and possibly some staff members too, just look at that number. That's a very intentional number, I would say. Why 49.9 and not 50? Well, goodness knows. But we also know that there's going to be a bunch of costs involved, which they're still not talking about, involved with asbestos that was used in every school in Ontario of a certain age, and that asbestos will have to be removed. And why are we not? Are we still not getting the full picture of what's going on at Bateman? And that's a reasonable question.
I still question. I think it comes down to the question of if the entire point of it is to give a place for Brock University a place to set up shop for their education faculty or Department of Education. My question is, why doesn't Brock just buy it? Like, why does the city need to buy it so that they can lease it to Brock? Like, if Brock is so desperate for the place, why not just say, well, fine, Brock, you buy it and save the city, $50 million. No one from the city has been able to satisfy that answer to me of why must we, the taxpayers in Burlington, purchase this back. Like, it boggles me. And I know we're getting other stuff like the library, and we get to keep the pool bank. Okay, but here, the other thing is building you're renovating Skyway Arena, which is, if you don't know, that's pretty much around the corner from where this place is. Build the pool there. There's land there. I know for a fact there's plenty of land. They're renovating it to turn it into a really nice hockey rink, which is great, wonderful. Add on a pool. There's a lot of questions that nobody wants to answer from the city of Burlington on this project. I still say kudos to Shauna Stolte for at least informing us of what the pricing would be. And lo and behold, maybe her snafu kept the price tag at a cool 50 mil, cool shy of a cool 50 mil. So, kudos to you, Shauna.
Well, and that's still the costs that they're predicting, right? That's the budget for adaptive reuse is the phrase that using. So it's not just the purchase, but making it good to in fact use. Mm-hmm. As for why, I think because the why is because that's the way. That's in other reasoning examples of school closures. That's what the public very much indicated they wanted. They haven't particularly indicated they wanted it with this one, but I think that the sort of knee-jerk reaction was, we have to take this back into city ownership. Just on a side note, I think it's amazing. I mean, every school that gets closed down and returned in whatever way is riddled with asbestos, which immediately becomes a problem when it's no longer a school. Why is it not a problem when it's still a school? I don't get that. I mean, I know there is asbestos in other schools in Burlington that are currently still schools. Teachers are just like, well, just steer clear of it and don't touch it. And that seems to be okay. And there are different types of asbestos, and I appreciate that. And some are more dangerous than others. I'm not saying that anything inappropriate is being done. It's just weird that the minute a school is no longer a school, that presence of asbestos in these old buildings no longer is tolerable, and it's a strange old business, isn't it? I mean, like, what the hell's that about? Anyway, that's all by the way, really. I mean, I think the city is still not being open enough about this. There's no reason or defense for privacy anymore. The transaction is done. There's no longer a land deal. I don't believe that there ever was a proper defense for the degree of secrecy there was around this. The only thing that needed to be private was the actual cost of the school that was going to be paid to Halton District School Board. Other than that, I don't see the need for privacy for anything. But this is the way that the government operates. So we're still not hearing about the full picture. It is, I don't think there's any real secret about the fact that there is asbestos there. It's been discussed at school board meetings in previous years when the closure was under discussion. So it's not a great secret, other than the fact that now the city isn't making that clear to the public, and they should do.
Sussy. All right, folks. Well, that's it for us today. Thanks very much for listening, and we will be back next week. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.